Good morning, everyone, or magandang umaga, as we say in the Philippines. My name is Peter McKenzie, and I am the Philippines Country Director for the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative, or ABAROLI. ABAROLI is an international NGO with more than 500 professional staff working on more than 50 country programs around the world. In the Philippines, we have had the privilege of working with the justice and legal sectors, as well as government and civil society since 2003. Our work has included strengthening justice institutions and supporting community participation in areas like human rights, anti-corruption, and access to justice. We're working to strengthen local capacity to champion and uphold the rule of law with a broad coalition of local partners, including the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, the Supreme Court, the Philippine Judicial Academy, the Department of Justice, the Legal Education Board, Philippine universities and law schools, and a spectrum of civil society organizations. We're currently implementing a 5-year USAID-funded program called Access to Justice and Support for the Rule of Law, which has made it possible for us to participate in the 11th Asia Pro Bono Conference to share our experiences and to learn from those of our colleagues in other countries. For this session entitled Strategic Pro Bono Programs for Vulnerable Sectors, we will first hear from attorney Liz Peraz, who is ABAROLI's Deputy Chief of Party for the Philippines, who will discuss the need to provide pro bono services to the most vulnerable sectors of Filipino society and the work that ABAROLI is doing in this area. Afterward, we will welcome leaders of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, or IBP, which has been the only mandatory bar association in the Philippines for nearly half a century. Our speakers include National Center for Legal Aid Director, Attorney Eric Alhar, and IBP Director for Chapter Affairs, Attorney Ibanez. These leaders will talk about the innovative legal aid model that IBP is currently using to empower Indigenous peoples who are often poor and live in remote areas through paralegal training and pro bono advisory services. Finally, we will hear from IBP Bataan Chapter President, Attorney Charina P. Ramos, who will discuss her chapter's initiatives to provide Indigenous people in Bataan with paralegal training on fundamental laws for establishing business cooperatives and legal due diligence. She's also our host this morning since we are broadcasting from the IBP Bataan Province chapter in Balanga. At the end of these presentations, we will open the floor for questions and clarifications. So our opening speaker is attorney Lcla Peraz, ABAROLI's Deputy Chief of Party for the Philippines. Before joining ABAROLI, attorney Liz previously worked for the Philippine Senate, the Commission on Human Rights, and the Center for Reproductive Rights as a local consultant for their Philippines program. Liz holds a Master of Laws degree in International Human Rights Law, a Bachelor of Law degree, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science. Welcome, Attorney Liz.
Thank you, Pete. As mentioned in the introduction, the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative, or ABAROLI or ABA-ROLI, has been in the Philippines since 2003. And we have had the honor and privilege to work with a number of CSOs and national government agencies. Second slide, please. Next slide, please. One of the projects of ABA-ROLI is the Access to Justice and Support for the Rule of Law. This runs for 5 years, and we are in our 4th year. Through Access, we have had the chance and opportunity to partner with NGOs, 19 of them to date, which provide pro bono services pertinent to access to justice. This includes paralegal training, representation, awareness raising, and other services. We also partner with national institutions, including the Supreme Court and the Legal Education Board. For our advocacy to institutionalize pro bono lawyering, our most important partner, of course, the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, or IB. Next slide, please. In this slide, you will see, and I would just like to show you the names of our Cso NGO partners. These organizations work on thematic issues of gender-based violence, anti-trafficking in persons, self-determination, and the right to development, including, of course, access to justice and rule of law, and collaborate with human rights defenders, Indigenous peoples, and various community stakeholders, including the academia, and local government for internship. For instance, our partner, the Ateneo Human Rights Center, has had interns with the Xavier University for paralegal training. Next slide, please. As you can see in this slide, we have reached more than 32,000 individuals on activities implemented by our partners. And I would like to particularly highlight, we have served 5,119 individuals on services, including advisory and counseling, case referrals, notarial services, and representation. Next slide, please. As mentioned, our work with IBP has included focus on Indigenous peoples. This was originally for Indigenous peoples. This was envisaged during the extended lockdowns in the country as a result of the pandemic, and which in turn compounded barriers to access to justice and legal aid services. In August 12 to 13 of this year, we have completed 10 legal aid caravans. And I would just like to mention as a special shout out to our chapter partners, IBP Bataan, Bukidnon, South Cotabato, Mountain Province, Antique, Palawan, Agusan del Sur, Surigao del Sur, Camarines Sur, and IBP Cebu City. And today we are honored to be joined the Vice President of IBP Zambales as a reactor to our session on access to justice. We have also welcomed and served 1,222 Indigenous peoples in these activities, made possible by the dedication of 286 pro bono lawyers. If I may grab the next slide, thanks. Other efforts of ABA Rowley in the Philippines include support for pro bono summits, and we have undertaken 2 virtual pro bono national summits, as well as focus group discussions on training on remote legal services. As you would see on the slide, we had the honor to welcome Chief Justice Hesmundo and also ABA leaders who joined in last year's pro bono summit during the Human Rights Week celebration in the country. And then I guess it's the second to the next slide. For the future work of ABA Rowley in the Philippines, we look forward to building upon our accomplishments. We endeavor to ensure that with available resources, we can support tapping into technology to improve access to justice, while at the same time encouraging lawyers to be involved in pro bono work. We have also started another round of legal aid caravans to other sectors, and not just Indigenous peoples. We are also very open to further partner with the judicial sector and the bar in the chapters for the development of policies that will institutionalize pro bono work in our jurisdiction and encourage especially the young lawyers being admitted into the bar. At the end of the session, I'd be happy to answer your questions if there are clarificatory issues that you would like to raise. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. That ends my presentation.
Thank you, Attorney Liz, for that great summary of the work that we're doing in the Philippines with ABA Rowley. Next, I'd like to turn to our second speaker, which is Attorney Eric Alhar, who is the director of the IBP's National Center for Legal Aid, or NCLA. Attorney Alhar previously served as the president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines Caloocan Malabon Navotas chapter in Metro Manila, and was the IBP governor for the Southern Luzon region. Attorney Eric has 2 decades of litigation experience. He has his own law firm, and he served with the government of the Philippines as a public defender for more than 15 years. So welcome, Attorney Eric.
Good morning to the participants of this Access to Justice Exchange. First and foremost, would like to reintroduce our organization. Earlier, Attorney Liz and Attorney Pete mentioned about the ABA Rowley. Now I'm going to mention about the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. First, next slide, please. Attorney Jade. It is actually the, I would like to repeat, it is the mandatory organization of all lawyers in the Philippines. A lawyer actually cannot engage in the practice of law in our country without being a member of the IBP. Again, I would like to repeat, membership in our organization for all lawyers in the Philippines is mandatory. Next slide, please. pursuant to the IBP bylaws, the Committee on Legal Aid was created with the mandate of promoting the establishment and efficient maintenance of the chapter legal aid organization suited to provide free legal aid services. As of now, we have around 86 local chapters, and these local chapters have its own legal aid committee that addresses the pro bono requirement of each chapter. In the implementation of this specific mandate, our department, the National Center for Legal Aid, is at the forefront. It has the overall supervision in all committees on legal aid and the latter's pro bono activities. It also takes a lead role in providing access to justice through members of the IBP who render adequate, competent, and effective pro bono legal assistance to indigents, underprivileged members of the marginalized sector, and other deserving member of the community in all cases, matters, or situations in which legal aid may be necessary to forestall injustice. My presentation right now is about pro bono legal services being presently undertaken by the IBP through our department and its local chapters, more specifically those activities that focus on the indigenous people and other marginalized sector in our country. Next slide, please. But first, I would like to state the programs and projects of the NCLA in general. And this includes, first, the pro bono lawyering, which is the traditional one involving legal representation, legal documentation, legal counseling and advice, mediation, legal research and opinion formulation, among others. Free notarization is sometimes offered by selected local chapters for non-commercial documents. Aside from pro bono lawyering, we offer also developmental legal aid and other allied services. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to share the significant pro bono legal aid projects and activities of the IBP. The flagship project of the incumbent national president and the present board of governors of the IBP is the Inclusive Growth Through Inclusive Business project. The primary objective of the project is to assist the indigenous people in creating an organization with a recognized juridical personality like cooperatives, corporation, partnerships, associations, and government-registered entities. These entities actually, and other government entities authorized to engage in economic transactions for them, the purpose of which is to deal with the government, financial institutions, and the private sector. But at the same time, our effort must be consistent with their customary laws and tradition. The program will highlight the concept of basically the sustainability management and the interfacing aspect of entrepreneurship, but at the same time in keeping with the IP traditions and customs. This can be done by providing them with needed financial requirements in securing registration from appropriate government agencies, educating the indigenous people of the advantages of entrepreneurship, capacitating them to access financial assistance and loan accommodation from financial institutions in order to fund its development projects, and identifying and developing marketplace for their indigenous and local products. But aside from our assistance, we have to consider the free and prior informed consent, which was actually part of the lecture of one of the Philippine contingent during the pro bono conference held a few days ago. The project was later expanded to include other marginalized sectors like fisher folks, farmers, among others. Next slide, please. Next slide. Jade. Okay. What were our targeted output to implement that project? we will be forming at least 3 marginalized sector-led business entities, one in Luzon, one in Visayas, and one in Mindanao. We have decided to tap the assistance of IBP Bataan, where we are currently right now, IBP Negros Occidental, as well as IBP South Cotabato and General Santos, since the pilot areas that we have selected were within the respective jurisdiction. To make our work easier and efficient, we enlisted the assistance of 2 government agencies, the National Commission on Indigenous People, as well as the Cooperative Development Authority. Our collaboration was institutionalized in the form of a tripartite memorandum of agreement. Thereafter, seminars and other capacity building activities were conducted. We also assisted them, the beneficiaries of the legal aid project, in the documentation needed in the application for registration with Cooperative Development Authority. I will not delve too much on the subject as this will be the topic that would be delivered by Attorney Charina Ramos later on. Next slide, please. Sometime last year, the ABA Raleigh approached our organization for a possible collaboration in holding legal aid clinics designed to address the legal needs of the members of the IP communities all over the country, with the end view of increasing access to justice by bringing legal consultation, legal documentation, as well as notarization of non-commercial documents closer to the community. The Legal Aid Caravan for Indigenous People was conceptualized. Normally, pro bono legal aid services are being offered and done the 4 corners of our local chapters offices. But with the Legal Aid Caravan, legal assistance were brought closer to the community, closer to the doorstep of their respective houses. This is not a novel project as this has been done before by our local chapters, but the difference is that our target beneficiaries are the members of our IP communities. ABA Raleigh provided our local chapters with the resounding stimulus as they participated not only in the planning but in the actual execution of the project, and of course by providing the necessary funding in holding the said pro bono legal aid activities. We do this particular project by choosing a place near our targeted beneficiaries' residence and conduct our legal aid program. If the place we end up is a little bit farther from the houses of our target beneficiaries because they do not have a big place that could accommodate our volunteer workers and chosen recipients because of COVID-related regulations, either we rent cars to bring them from their respective residences to our chosen venue, or we reimburse their fare. We also provide them lunch and even merienda. Sometimes, indigenous peoples and members of other marginalized sectors, despite their legal needs, had to forego seeking lawyers' services because they have to prioritize their work and other sources of livelihood to be able to survive. So sometimes, we were constrained to provide them as well as with pocket money on their way home. Otherwise, we cannot convince them to avail of our services despite that they were the ones who are badly in need of legal assistance, The targeted beneficiaries actually were the ones in need of legal services of lawyers, but the legal aid service provider, the IBP and ABA Raleigh, in this case, have to provide them amount of money just to entice them to avail of the legal services, which are even being provided to them for free. The project on legal aid caravans kicked off last November 21, 2021 in Barangay Pita, Dinalupihan, Bataan in Luzon, which was hosted by our host chapter right now, IBP Bataan. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, sorry. The caravan actually traveled next all the way to Bukidnon last November 24, 2021, and to South Cotabato, both provinces in Mindanao, last February this time the leg in South Cotabato was held last February 17, 2022, and were organized. The two caravans were organized by our IBP Bukidnon and IBP South Cotabato and General Santos chapters. The legal aid caravan traveled to some other places, such as this was actually mentioned by Attorney Liz earlier. Some of these places includes Mountain Province last March 25, 2022, Antique last April 23, 2022, on May 28, 2022 in Puerto Princesa City, and Camarines Sur last July 15, 2022, which were co-sponsored by our local chapters in that areas. Next slide, please. Initially, our arrangement with ABA Raleigh was to assist them in bringing the legal aid caravan to 10 places all over the country. But even prior to visiting 10 places, earlier, Attorney Liz also mentioned that we gone to at least 10 places already. ABA Raleigh again approached us for an expanded coverage of the project. With similar undertaking to fund the project, additional 20 places were included, but the beneficiaries this time were not limited to IPs, but includes other marginalized sector of our community. It was IBP Cebu's turn to assist us when it hosted the legal aid caravan last July 8, 2022 at the sports complex of Balamban, Cebu. By the way, IBP Cebu City chapter wrapped up the first batch of the legal aid caravan with a back-to-back legal aid activities at the covered court of Barangay Mambaling, Cebu City on August 12, 2022, and the following day, August 13, 2022, at Naga City Hall parking lot, Naga City, Cebu. Other places that were visited by the legal aid caravan during the first batch was Agusan del Sur and Surigao del Sur. The legal aid caravan batch 2 proceeded to Barangay Dato Tangkilan, Sindangan, Zamboanga del Norte last August 19, 2022 with IBP Zamboanga del Norte as host. We are not even halfway in batch 2, but ABA Raleigh in sponsorship again, is sponsoring again batch 3 with 10 places more in the lineup. So all in all, we are targeting to bring the project in 40 places all over the Philippines. I would like to reiterate our appreciation to the support of ABA Raleigh for partnering with us by continuously providing us with the much needed resources for us to continue working on our advocacies. While IBP regularly receive financial subsidy from the Philippine government, still the same is not enough to sustain the various activities and programs of the IBP. Thus, we greatly welcome the support of ABA Raleigh. And of course, we are open to possible collaboration with other funding agencies as well, who are also in attendance in this virtual exchange and who might have chosen this session. Next slide, please. Actually, to add, Attorney Liz mentioned 10. We have actually visited as of today, at least, I believe, 13 places already. And we will be visiting next week another place. I mentioned earlier that the legal aid caravan is not really novel, as our local chapters had continuously conducted different legal aid caravan all over the Philippines, even before the partnership with ABA Raleigh. Others had in mind the public in general as target recipients of the pro bono services. But there are chapters actually who on their own held legal aid caravans with the marginalized sectors as intended receiver of the legal aid service, like the one in Cebu, Cebu City's Araw para sa Badyaw Grand Legal Aid last April 30, 2022 in Alaska Elementary School in Barangay Mambaling, Cebu City. Another one is the joint IBP Bohol and IBP Cebu City's Legal Aid Caravan for the Iskaya Indigenous Peoples Community in Barangay Biasbas, Gindolman, Bohol last July 24, 2022 and the legal aid caravan of IBP Occidental Mindoro for the IP community in Batusingit, Rizal, Mindoro, Occidental last July 10, 2022. There are other notable legal aid caravans like the legal aid program for solo parents held last September 2, 2022 at Barangay Boyabod, Santa Cruz, Marinduque of IBP Marinduque and PAO Santa Cruz District Office. There are also another notable projects that I could cite is the one flashed on the screen, which is the legal aid and gift giving for indigenous people at Batusingit, pre-legal aid service and distribution rather of hygienic kits to persons in conflict with the law last August 5, 2022, which is a partnership between IBP Nueva Ecija, PAO, Gapan, as well as other partners. Next slide, please. Aside from the projects that I mentioned earlier, the IBP also has jail decongestion effort, which are also regularly being conducted by our local chapters all over the country. This is intended to assist another underprivileged sector of our society, those persons deprived of their liberty. Usually such endeavor is being done in cooperation with the district offices of the Public Attorney's Office nationwide. But among the notable undertakings are as follows. IBP Cebu through its No One Left Behind project. Next slide, please. IBP Cebu Cities, Humanity Behind Bars. And next slide, please. We have the one flash on the screen is IBP RSM's Ligaya Salaya project. Before the pandemic, this legal aid work is being done face-to-face. But again, because of COVID-19, lawyers tended to be innovative by making legal assistance available through online virtual means. We had to be innovative, as I mentioned earlier, to increase access to justice. Next slide, please. The IBP to a great extent depends on the capabilities of its volunteer lawyers and legal aid clerks. The success of our organization in rendering pro bono works is highly contingent to their know-how, skills, and competence in dealing with a considerable large number of clients. Thus, it has to embark on a series of capacity building initiatives primarily designed to increase their potential and enhance their capabilities in aiding access to justice. And of course, make them more effective in attending to their clients' legal needs and requirements. I have to capsulize that this training were actually done to improve the quality of pro bono legal aid service being extended by the IBP through the NCLA and the 86 local chapters. But because of the pandemic due to financial constraint, we have to resort to web-based seminars in our desire to get our volunteer lawyers and legal aid clerks more equipped with essential information and knowledge. Since online platform for webinars can cater to a significant number of participants, we also allow law students, paralegals, and the general public to attend and participate in our virtual legal education campaigns. Since July 2021, we were holding webinars at least once or twice a month. Topics varies from recent legislations, recent jurisprudence, among others. Some of the topics are designed primarily to assist our volunteer workers in handling marginalized sector of our community. We sponsored a celebration of pride, a two-part webinar in partnership with one of our local chapters, IBP RSM, the Rainbow Rights Philippines, Outright Action International, and Engender Rights Inc. held last June 30, 2022 and July 5, 2022. This is primarily intended not only for audience awareness, but to empower them with the right protocol in dealing with members of the LGBTQI+ community. This was actually followed by another webinar tailored fit for our legal aid clerks, the IBP Legal Aid Clerk Capacity Building, a SOGI 101 training on how to properly address SOGI-related legal concern and other related legal aid matters, which was actually held just a few days ago, last September 22, 2022, still in partnership with Rainbow Rights Philippines. Next slide, please. Earlier in August 10, 2021, we conducted a webinar entitled IPRA 101, Orientation on RA 8371, and Basic Sensitivity Training designed to enhance the capabilities of our volunteer lawyers and legal aid clerks in rendering legal aid to indigenous people. Next slide, please. Our local chapters cannot be left out. They themselves organize actually webinars which were consciously planned to improve the quality of pro bono works being extended to marginalized sectors of our community. Some of this includes the IBP La Union's webinar last August 12, 2022, entitled Empowering Solo Parents, with no less than the Honorable Senator of the Republic of the Philippines, Risa Ontiveros, as resource person. Another notable webinar by our local chapter, which is intended to increase capabilities of participants in assisting LGBTQI+ in an online lecture on SOGI 101 and Bataan SOGI Non-Discrimination Act, was organized last July 23, 2022, of course by, again, our host chapter IBP Bataan and the Maribeles Rainbow Alliance. Next slide, please. Several of our local chapters had organized several charitable works under our developmental legal aid program, with indigenous people and other marginalized sector as targeted beneficiaries, notable of which are the following: IBP Cebu City's Project Education Adapt and IP Learner, wherein scholarship grants were provided to selected Bajau elementary students chosen by the NCIP Cebu Provincial Office. Next slide, please. Another one is IBP Calmana's lecture on IPRA law and gift-giving to Aita kids at Sitio Malipano, Barangay Batyawan, Zambales on April 30, 2022. And also IBP Cebu City's theoretical driving course, which was offered for free to Bajau and Ati under its project Kaya Natin, Capacity Building and Livelihood Programs for Indigenous Peoples at the IBP Social Hall at the Capital Compound of Cebu City last July 8 and 11, 2022. Next slide, please. These are among the notable projects which were both actually offered not by the chapter but by a region. First one is IBP Southern Luzon Region's Bicicleta Project, wherein bicycles were donated to school children which they can use in going to their schools. And the other one is gift-giving activity, which were intended for the abused and abandoned children, which was a project of IBP Central Luzon Region. Next slide, please. This is only my personal opinion, but I believe that IBP is actually facing serious dwindling number of volunteer lawyers. The good thing is that a lot of local IBP chapters forged tie up through a memorandum of agreement understanding with a lot of law schools all over the country for a volunteer lawyers to serve as supervising lawyers of law students to engage in limited practice of law under the revised student practice rule. Before I go further, please allow me to provide you with some background. In June 2019, actually, June 25, 2019, the Supreme Court of the Philippines adopted and promulgated Administrative Matter number 19-03-24-SC, or the revised law student practice rule. The salient feature of the revised rule is that a law student must now be certified to be able to engage in a limited practice of law. The particular amendment not only enhances learning opportunities of the law students here in our country, but by instilling in them the value of legal professional social responsibility and to prepare them for the practice of law, but at the same time increases access to justice to those who are in need of legal services, especially to the marginalized and vulnerable sectors as well. But there are law schools who find it hard to fully operationalize the clinical legal education program because of their limited number of supervising lawyers. IBP comes in through a memorandum of agreement or undertaking that I mentioned earlier, but by undertaking to provide law schools with volunteer lawyers to supervise, guide, and mentor qualified law student practitioners, and this is being offered for free. As part of my parting words, access to justice disproportionately affects those who are marginalized, like indigenous people, women, LGBTQI+, persons deprived of liberty, farmers and fisher folks, child victims of online sexual abuse, or those who belong to other vulnerable sectors by reason of their identity, gender, status in life, religion, sexual opinion, and even mere political sexual orientation rather, and even mere political opinion. Access to justice entails not simply the provisions of legal services, but the provision of services that are culturally sensitive, tailor-fit, and attuned to the needs and the respect and the perspective of equity-seeking groups that I mentioned earlier. To us pro bono workers, in providing legal assistance with the end view of increasing access to justice, we must strive not to focus solely on who are able to receive our legal services, but also who are able to benefit from our legal services that are responsive and sensitive to their prevailing personal circumstances. I think my presentation ends there. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Attorney Eric, for telling us about the important work that the IBP is doing in pro bono lawyering. And now we will continue to hear from the IBP leadership. Our next speaker is Attorney Manuel Joseph Ibanez III, or as we call him, Attorney Jam. Attorney Jam obtained his JD from the University of the Philippines College of Law and was admitted to the Philippine Bar in 2010. His law practice has focused on labor law, corporate law, banking, and special projects. Presently, he serves as IBP's Director for Chapter Affairs and as a Commissioner in the IBP Commission for Bar Discipline. He's also the Vice President of the IBP Rizal RSM chapter, which covers the province of Rizal, as well as several cities in and around Metro Manila, including San Juan, Mandaluyong, Pasig, Taguig, Marikina, and Antipolo, and the municipality of Peraz. Welcome, Attorney Jam.
Thank you, Pete, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Jam Ibanez, the National Director for Chapter Affairs of the IBP. So as presented by Director Eric earlier, the three fundamental purposes of the IBP is to elevate the standards of the legal profession, to improve the administration of justice, and to enable the bar to discharge its public responsibilities more effectively. So how does the Organization for the Legal Profession do this in an archipelagic country such as the Philippines, which composes of 7,107 islands? Next slide, please. Quite simply, it's through the supervision of 86 chapters scattered all over the archipelago, which itself is divided into 9 IBP regions. It's through these chapters that the IBP is able to ideally address the specific and endemic needs in each area. One can safely assume, of course, that lawyers that reside or practice in a certain area will be most equipped and familiar to handle matters in the said area. Now, of course, this is still easier said than done. This is still made difficult by geographical constraints, and we're still limited, of course, by our methods of communication and reporting. But as it was underscored during the COVID-19 pandemic, which saw the whole country, the whole world on lockdown, that such coordination and supervision is not only doable, but can be effective as well if we would all work hand in hand together. So next slide, please. Going back to the last 2 or 3 years, there's no question that the pandemic imposed restrictions on all of us. Restrictions that we have never experienced to such a degree. But instead of brooding or leaving the chapters on their own, the 25th board, through the leadership of our national president, Bert Estrada, who also happens to be my justice hero, decided to revisit the relevance of the legal profession and refocus on the advocacies of the organization in light of the lessons that we've learned and are, of course, still learning from the pandemic. Particular focus was given to internal housekeeping. Now you may ask, what relevance would this approach have on a pro bono service and access to justice? Actually, quite a lot. No? It was the belief of the national president that before we become fully effective, we also have to sharpen and strengthen the tools that can help us in dispensing and ensuring that the rule of law is applied timely and correctly. The tools, of course, being the chapters, and through the chapters, the members of the legal profession. Emphasis was also given to developing the MyIBP app, which allowed the lawyers from all over the country to communicate more effectively with the IBP and be appraised and involved in public legal matters. Finances and financial processes, both local and national, were audited to ensure that not a cent goes to waste, as well as prove to the agencies such as the Supreme Court that the IBP reports to that the funds are critical to the agencies that the IBP reports to, that the funds that are critical to the activities of the IBP are being utilized properly. As presented by Direct Eric also earlier, the national office focused on chapter capacity building. The pandemic for the better increased our reliance on online tools such as social media and Zoom. These tools were further tapped through the conduct of monthly legal aid webinars, as well as internal webinars conducted by the Committee on Chapter Affairs. And the national office also sought the provision of laptops for every chapter, as well as the subsidization of internet connection to at least ensure that the chapters were able to provide legal aid even during the pandemic from the safety of their homes. And with the pandemic restrictions slowly being raised, we also hit the ground running by pushing for chapter visitation. It's quite simply an effort that was never done before. This allowed the national office, through the president, myself, and the director of legal aid, to effectively communicate with the officers on the ground. We were able to see the situation for the regions that were visited and were able to address concerns and matters that were raised in real time. In each chapter visit, we also request each chapter to also conduct a legal aid activity. This is really more so that we can show that it could really be done, but also to see what we can learn from the chapter itself. At the same time, and this is the portion I will particularly underscore, focus was given to operationalizing our existing and new partnerships for the benefit of everyone. This included, among others, our partnership with the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, which was discussed in more detail by Direct Eric earlier and will be discussed maybe by the President Cha later. Of course, more importantly, our partnerships with Abaroli and USAID deserve particular distinction. The projects and activities that we do with them, even including this conference right now, being flagship projects that are both critical and integral to our legal aid service. For example, we have access to justice, as Attorney Liz mentioned earlier, for Indigenous peoples and marginalized sectors of society. Next slide, please. Can we just jump dun sa ibang slides mo? 3 more. There you go. 1 more, please. Let's go to one more. There you go. Thank you. We have access to justice, as I mentioned earlier. Which is done through the conduct of legal aid caravans in the various areas of the country where access to justice is particularly wanting. This was initially only for 3 to 10 chapters, but due to its success, we're looking to into 2 more batches of 10 chapters each, with which to conduct more legal aid caravans. In connection thereto, we're also now working with ABA Raleigh to establish a video conference booth in pilot chapters to allow for the conduct of video conference hearings with the courts. What is important to note with the Access to Justice project is that with the support of ABA Raleigh and in coordination with our chapters, we're able to establish templates for partnership and coordination that would serve the rule of law and access to justice well into the future. Another such project, which I won't really delve as much into, would be the Secure Justice Project, this time with USAID. This was already, I think, discussed partially by Eric, but it's these kinds of projects where opportunities are provided to chapters, which would then make the most out of the same for the betterment of those who need the law the most in their areas. Again, I refer to Direct Eric's presentation earlier. These approaches, we believe, allowed most of our chapters to function to their full potential or be given the opportunity to augment or support their local efforts, with the regional and local chapters being equipped and pushed by the national office to still push through with their activities and legal aid programs despite the pandemic. First, again, the development of legal aid caravans. The example of this would be the Cebu chapter. Chapters are placed in a position to readily identify what would be needed in the caravans, being the most familiar with their areas. Thus, important information from the chapter is relayed to the national office and the ABA Raleigh, both of which can make the necessary adjustments on how the support is to be provided. So again, I refer to the Cebu chapters. Their caravans are particularly well-oiled machines now that can be up and running only in the matter of hours or days. This is complemented particularly in the Cebu province chapter, which places a lot of emphasis on member or volunteer care to maximize volunteer participation. They engage in sponsorships and they look at other means to encourage lawyers to volunteer their time, and thus they average 40 to 90 volunteers per activity. Second, the pivot to online means of legal aid. From the conduct of webinars to the development of online platforms, chapters were able to tap resources that simply couldn't be tapped before. Now legal luminaries can appear before far-flung chapters. Consultations may be done despite the distance. Law students may be supervised by supervising lawyers wherever they are. And most of our chapters have already since established a healthy practice or a healthy legal aid program online. Of course, we need to mention that the Philippines happens to be the Facebook capital of the world. So one particular shift would be the conduct of legal aid clinics. So not using Zoom, but using Facebook actually to facilitate the means and merit test so that they are able to conduct legal aid programs regularly. Third, the focus on improving relationships with the LGUs, which I believe Direct Eric also discussed earlier, to obtain financial support for chapter legal aid programs as well as law schools for law student practitioners. The Rizal RSM chapter, for example, of which I am a member of, has roughly 71 law student practitioners at our disposal, with volunteer lawyers supervising the students in conducting legal aid. We have several chapters also enjoying the support from their local government, enabling them to expand on their legal aid programs. Fourth, the coordination of the chapters with each other to render legal service in areas that are in need of the same. All of these encourage the stronger and more active chapters to actually reach out to the lesser or smaller chapters to help. For example, the Cebu Province chapter recently reached out to the Southern Leyte program, Southern Leyte chapter, in aid of the Abogado to the Barrios program that they were initiating, as well as enter into sisterhood agreements. This allowed everyone actually to participate with respect to providing legal assistance. And all of these practices, which can we go back to the previous slide, please, Ken? Previous slide. Let's go back to the previous slide. One more slide. There you go. There you go. Thank you. All of these innovations are then highlighted by the national office through webinars on best practices, which is presented to all of the chapters. We have the chapters in attendance to show them what the other chapters have been doing. And this can be and that these practices can either be emulated or be improved upon through the efforts of the national office and the chapters, as well as our partners. We put a lot of value in leadership through example, and most of all, sustainability. I think one of the hardest things to do in any legal aid program is to secure volunteers for each and every activity, or at the very least, to ensure the continuity of such a program. It's these innovations that the chapters have displayed that we believe help address the same, especially with the support of organizations such as ABA Roli, and we're seeing results. And now, as the IBP celebrates 50 years, we've worked towards revisiting our relevance and refocusing our advocacies to shift mindsets and increase awareness as to how the rule of law and the administration of justice are very focal points in the everyday lives of everyone, from the lawyer to the person that we see on the streets. The administration of justice is very much involved in all our lives. The practice of law, next slide please, is already difficult. We all know that. More importantly, given the nature of this conference, I'm sure that everyone here all understands how the engagement in legal aid lawyering and pro bono assistance makes this even harder. But our presence here and the passion that we engage each other with all but shows the love that we have for the profession, the administration of justice and legal aid. And of course, if you love something so much, would you give anything less? I don't think so. Rather, I think we're more willing to sacrifice for it. So, and a sacrifice is the currency of love, as our national president, Bert Estrada, is fond of saying. I end with a saying that I'm sure we're all very familiar about. Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach him how to fish and he eats for a lifetime. These are wonderful words, but in IBP, and I think also with our partners, we feel that we must take it one step further. Not only do we teach the man to fish, but we must also help him acquire the tools that are necessary for him to fish. Sustainability, not only from the perspective of the national office, but of the chapters, should be key. In doing so, not only does he eat for a lifetime, he may well very be in a position where he's able to also teach and feed others as well. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. Serve the country, here the IBP.
Thank you, Attorney John, for your inspiring presentation. Now we will move to our next speaker, who is Attorney Charina Ramos, the president of IBP's Bataan chapter, where we are currently sharing the office. Attorney Charina is the co-founder of her law firm and is active in litigation and corporate practice. She holds a Master of Laws degree in International Human Rights Laws, a JD, and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Attorney Ramos has been a practicing lawyer for 20 years. Please join me in welcoming her.
Hello, good morning to all of you. I think I've already understood. So I am Attorney Dalia Salamat. I will be discussing inclusive growth through inclusive business project, which was actually implemented in Bataan. So next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Ramos, but I think your voice is kind of like off tune, you know, with the audio because of the surrounding.
We ask if you. Yan ang kami. Is it better?
Nope. Still, we still cannot hear you well.
Hello.
Let's just hold on while they try to fix the issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we can dig on that.
Hello. Good morning. Can you actually hear me?
Yes, now it's much better. Yeah, it's
Okay,
nice.
thank you. So we actually met the Aita Ambala community the first time on November 20, 2021, when we conducted IP Legal Aid Caravan with Aberol in partnership with Aberol in Pita, Dinalupihan, Philippines. So there we actually have free consultation or pro bono consultations with them, and we learned of the different problems that they encountered, such as a lack of birth certificates, marriage contracts, birth of records of debts, etc., etc. And we also learned that it is very difficult for them to have a sustainable livelihood. It's very hard for them to market their produce, their crops, and to have a transportation that can easily transport their produce in the markets. And they are actually very short. They are actually shortchanged by the lowland people. So we decided to meet with their representatives and explain to them that IBP has a program which is to help them to form a cooperative only if they want us to help them in their in the preparations of the documents, in representing them to the legal to the various or offices of the governments that could actually help them, and in partnership with the CDA and IB. So next slide, please. So after meeting with the representatives of the Aita Ambala, which were actually consisting of Aita Ambala community in Payangan, in Tubo-Tubo, and in Payangan, Tubo-Tubo, and Bayan-Bayanan. There are actually 3 barangays, but they have the same community, which is Aita Ambala. So we met with them, we explained to them how the IBP could actually help them in the drafting of the legal documents, in representing them with the representatives of the different government agencies, and in partnering with them with different networks that could actually help them market their produce. So they actually agreed that they will bring their members and meet with us. So we had this consultation together with the Cooperative Development Authority representatives. And then again, they explained to them what is a cooperative and what are the disadvantages and advantages of having a cooperative, and how can it actually uplift their lives. And so that they will not depend entirely on the doleouts of the government, and they will have a better future equal with the lowland people. So next slide, please. So this is officially the first step, which is actually pre-registration seminar, which was held on February 20, 2022 in Magsaysay, Dinalupihan. So again, this is pro bono. We invited the representatives from the Cooperative Development Authority. They explained to them the laws covering cooperatives and what are the implementing laws, what are their roles, the members, what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a cooperative, what is an article of cooperation, the bylaws, what are the roles of each officers, and the repertorial requirements, and all the needed requirements to form a cooperative. We also invited the chairman of a successful multi-cooperative in Dinalupihan, Bataan, Philippines. And he explained to them, he narrated to them how they started their cooperative and how they started very small and now a very successful one, and how it actually helped their members and how they also help the cooperative as members. So they actually already chose their board of directors and officers during that pre-registration seminar. So next slide, please. So finally, we were officially welcomed into their community through their ritual and ceremonial signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on March 11, 2022 in Payangan, Dinalupihan, Philippines. So there they actually explained to us what they are going to perform, and that they were actually very happy and ecstatic that when they slit the neck of the chicken, blood actually flowed continuously from it. So for them, it means that the project and the initiative of the IBP will be a success, and it is blessed by their ancestors. So, and they are also very happy that IBP is actually helping them to form a cooperative and help them uplift their lives, because they were actually very wary of people allegedly or claiming help them, because not all of them actually help them, but they only use them in their for their hidden agenda, and sometimes actually land grab their ancestral domain. But they actually believed us and trusted us, so they performed the ritual and we had the ceremonial signing. So next slide, please. This will be videos of the ritual. We can watch it since it is very short only.
Maganda rin kung mag-join kayo, attorney, para makita.
Mamaya nga, magparo-paro din tayo.
Kalawa, nakakabu, nakapundi,
traditional na mga aita na bilang papasalamat sa ating pong kapal at sa mga taong na gustong tumulong sa mga aita. Ganito po yung aming naliriktuan. Ito po yung pamamaraan.
Hoy, apo! Salamat apo! Hauya haing ibi mo kanya na kay ka.
Hindi po nandiyan sa ating pamilya.
Biyayay apo! Unang-unay apo, halong libong gobyerno'y apo. Ya, mampintulong kanya na apo. Hanang kay ka apo. Umunlad. Ya kanyang pamumuhay. Kami mialiha. Mialih kami ha kairapan na apo. No pagkapakun hila, habato kami mo ta apo. Habati inihihilin niyang kamoy apo. Ate, ya pasasalamat niyang kamoy apo. Nagbibideo ka, tapos di ba tinitiblan?
Sa unang pagkakataon po ng mga aita na lumahok sa ganitong programa, yun po, humihingi ng dasal, nagpapasalamat, kaya po yan ang mga traditional na ginagawa po ng mga aita ambala. Sana po maging patuloy ang kaundaran at
Kasi sa amin po, Vice, talagang ito yung pinakamatanda sa amin din.
Opo.
Sa pagka nag-aano po kami, pagka talagang ganyan, pagka medyo marami ang lumalabas na dugo, yung biyaya sa amin, talagang tuloy-tuloy po yun.
Ayos.
Kasi po kahit na ano sa iba-ibang tribo po yan, kanya-kanya po ano yan eh.
Tradisyon.
Opo. Pero sa amin po, basta yan po, pagka yan po may maraming dugo na ganyan.
Mas maganda, mas marami.
Opo, kaunti lang ang dugo. Pero kung kaunti lang po yung dugo niyan,
Oo. Hindi ano. So ibig sabihin, yung ginagawa ng IBP ngayon ay bibiyaan ng
sigurado.
marami. Magiging fruitful yung activity natin.
Lalo na po yan, no? Andito po yung matanda.
Nakadalo siya.
Opo.
Biyaya ka rin sa amin.
Baka ang mangyayari po niyan, wala pong hinto yan eh. Dahil yung pong dugo niyan, hindi po na naputol.
Hindi naputol yung dugo. No? Pero unusual yan.
Tuloy-tuloy po yan. Tuloy-tuloy po yan.
Unusual nga yun.
Mabiyaya tayo. Hindi po. Pero tuloy-tuloy po yan. Dahil hindi po naputol yung ano niya.
So in that,
Kasi sa amin po,
so in that 2 videos, the person who actually performed it, they actually explained to us that if the blood flowed only little and will not continuously flow, then it means it is not blessed by their ancestors, and they will probably not enter into an agreement or memorandum of understanding with us. And so the IBP program or project will already be a failure. So we were actually very ecstatic when they explained to us that because of the said ritual and that the blood flowed continuously, they will agree and they will enter into a memorandum of understanding with us. So we're very happy, and we were actually given instructions what to do during that ritual, and we gladly followed every step of it. And again, we explained to them that we will enter only into a memorandum of understanding with them without compromising any of their traditions or cultures, and that we will abide by any of their traditions. So they agreed, and they were very happy with the result. So next slide, please. So finally, this is already the Memorandum of Understanding signing with Aita Ambala, the NCIP or the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples Representatives of Region 3 and the IBP Bataan chapter. So the MOU was actually drafted by IBP National, and it actually contained the duties and of each and every party, the NCIP and the IBP. And again, it contained that we will respect the traditions, the ancestral domain, and all the laws governing the IPRA or the IPRA or the indigenous people. I forgot. The law governing the indigenous people here in the Philippines. So that was held on April 8, 2022. So that's already an official agreement among Aita Ambala representatives, the NCIP, and the IB Bataan chapter. Next slide, please. So finally, after conferring with the representatives and the members of the Aita Ambala indigenous people and gathering all the documents, drafting all the documents needed, required for the formation of a cooperative, after coordinating with all the government agencies such as the CDA, the NCIP, the LGU, we were able to submit online the Aita Ambala Dinalupian Indigenous People Agricultural Cooperative. That was on July 18. And then on July 31, we were already congratulated that our application is already for printing and submission. And so after printing and notarization of all the documents, we again submitted it, the hard copy to the Region 3 Pampanga, Philippines. And finally, on September 13, 2022, we were already issued the certificate of registration that finally the Aita Ambala already has a agricultural cooperative, so they can already enjoy the benefits of an agricultural cooperative. So we were very happy, and we already announced to them, and of course they were very happy, and they know that it's already the start of our fruitful cooperation. So next slide, please. So this is actually the project overview, what we accomplished here in IBP Bataan chapter. So consultations and preparation of board resolution to allow IBP to help them form a cooperative. So the result is the indigenous peoples learn to trust the lawyers, because I've mentioned a while ago that there were a lot of people claiming to help them, but they actually don't help them. They just take advantage of them and their trust. So they were very careful in dealing with us. So number two, the pre-registration seminar and preparation of special power of attorney, the board resolution, again, authorizing the IP representatives to sign the MOA or MOU with the IBP and NCIP. So the result of that is that the indigenous peoples learn to trust their representatives and learn the advantages of forming a cooperative as well as the work needed. So all of this, we actually did all of this pro bono because they were already having a hard time to have food on their table. So to burden them with expenses, they will not cooperate with us and they will not continue with this partnership. So number three, coordination with the NCIP, CDA. So finally, they know that there are actually a lot of government agencies willing to help them. They just don't know how to coordinate with them and to be represented by their chieftains or the IPMR or the indigenous people municipal representative. So we help them coordinate with all of these government agencies. So number three, as I've mentioned before, the preparation of the MOU or Memorandum of Understanding. So to ensure that IPs will have an informed consent and the utmost priority is their welfare. So we explained that our president is actually an IP. So we have the IBP has no hidden agenda, and everything that this project, it's all about them and it's actually for their benefit. The main purpose of this is for them to have a sustainable livelihood. So next is cooperative officers formation, name registration, preparation of articles of cooperation, bylaws, opening of bank account, treasurer's affidavit, officers fund to ensure that the IPs that the cooperative is for their benefit. So every step of this cooperative formation, we explain to them. Hence, we actually earn their trust and confidence, and they allow us to represent them every step of the way. So next is the online registration, notarization of documents, and submission of documents to the CDA. Since only a few of them were educated, they could not possibly register their cooperative online, and they could not possibly accomplish all these documents. So it is the IBP who helped them accomplish all of this. And finally, effectively represents the IP and empowers them to be self-sufficient. So the result of this is, for me and for them, the project actually gives them hope. They were very happy. They were always thanking us that finally there's an organization which is really helping them to have a sustainable livelihood and not to have their hidden agenda pushed. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening to our report.
Thank you so much, Attorney Charina, for giving us such a, sorry, your speaker. Yeah. Sorry, just a slight technical issue. Okay, sorry. So thank you so much, Attorney Charina, for giving us such a clear picture of your chapter, the IBP Bataan's chapter, work with the Aita Ambala peoples, to show us what a valuable contribution pro bono lawyering can be to the disadvantaged people within our communities and within our societies. So I applaud your chapter and the IBP's successful completion of that project, and I think we all can draw some inspiration from that. So finally, our final speaker will be our reactor, Attorney Dalia Salamat, the Vice President of IBP's chapter in Zambales province, who will provide her commentary on what we've heard so far from the other speakers and will share the experience of her own chapter in pro bono lawyering. Attorney Dalia obtained her JD from the University of the Philippines College of Law and her bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of the Philippines College of Public Administration and Governance. She was admitted to the bar in 2012. She previously worked for the Philippine Senate as a deputy chief of staff for a former senator, and she has since returned to private practice. So we welcome you, Attorney Dalia.
Salamat, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Dalia. I'm a lawyer from Zambales, Philippines. Can you hear me? I don't have a presentation. I'll react on the presentations of the other speakers. Hearing all these initiatives for IP communities is both heartwarming and truly inspiring. For us in Zambales, because Zambales is a province that is home to several IP communities. You would all know because most of them were displaced during the Great Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991, and that's a globally known event, no? I'd like to first share a little of what we have done so far in Zambales in the past years. Over the years, Zambales being home to IP communities of Aitas, our chapter has been conducting outreach programs. But mind you, these are not legal aid missions. We used to provide medical missions, we bring in doctors, we provide social services, we bring in aid from donor organizations in different communities such as Sitio Aglao in San Marcelino and Sitio Tralala in Olongapo. But in 2020, we started Upland Birthright. It's a developmental legal aid project that aims to provide assistance in the late registration of members of IP communities. During the pandemic, it's 2020, in the middle of the lockdown, and I was pregnant at that time, cognizant of the fact that most births in our IP communities are home births. They don't usually go to hospitals. This leads to almost always the non-registration of births. Children grow up without birth certificates in some communities. So we conducted our first Upland Birthright in the Pamulaklakin Aita community inside the Freeport zone of Subic. If you're familiar with the U.S. Naval Base in the Philippines, here in Subic, the whole area used to be inhabited by Aitas before it was taken over by the Americans. Thus, we have IP communities inside the base. So we chose this community because we were locked down with them during the pandemic. And assisted them in registering those that do not have birth certificate as of date. So, in the Philippines, in legal terms, birth determines personality. But it is the registration of one's birth that, quote unquote, officially gives one an identity cognizable by the state. A birth certificate is the most basic document of identity required to access and exercise your rights as a person and as a citizen. You need this for education, social services, and the exercise of your political rights, etc. Seeing the development in the provision of this kind of developmental legal aid is, again, as I've mentioned, inspiring, and for our part, very encouraging. Providing a legal solution to address economic concerns through projects like IDP Bataans is worth emulating. For a chapter like us, we are very inspired and would like to copy Attorney Charina. The Inclusive Growth Initiative provides empowerment to IP communities, opening up economic opportunity, as well as uphold their dignity. What we have learned in our collaboration with IP communities is that while they appreciate aid and assistance, what they appreciate more and seek more are assistance that provide them with sustainability, leaving them self-supporting and self-sustaining. For this year's iteration of Upland Birthright, we have chosen Lakas Pamayanan, or Lubos na Alyansa ng mga katutubong Aita sa Zambales. This is an alliance of several Aita groups displaced by the Pinatubo eruption. As I've mentioned earlier, there's a lot of Aita groups in Zambales. In Mount Pinatubo alone, more than 16 Aita communities were there before the eruption. I think Lakas ng Pamayanan is composed of about 5 tribes or Aita groups, and now they're just one big community. They are very organized and have long been collaborating with various groups such as the Sisters of Franciscan Missionaries of Mary. Since before, they've been supported by this group before the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, before 1991. Until now, their organization is collaborating with different NGOs, CSOs, and they have been participating in different government programs. But despite their advanced level of organization and again, participation in government programs, there still remains a lot to be done. Legal needs to be served or assisted. I pose this question: what's more unfortunate than not being able to afford a lawyer? I think it's needing a lawyer and not knowing it. We saw this in the soft survey that we have conducted with our partner organizations. I'd like to share some snippets of the needs assessment. First, on birth registration. This is an anecdote. There's a well-meaning educator, a teacher, well immersed in that Aita community, who assisted in late birth registration. In the simple act of filling out the form of an illegitimate child, filling out the form, the birth certificate, in his confusion on how to answer, he lent his name and put his name as the father. I mean, of course, he was well-meaning. He wanted to register the child, But he, of course, was well-meaning. But such act, in legal terms, changed the status of the person, which has legal consequences. And his act is actually a crime in the Philippines, punishable under the Penal Code, Article 347, simulation of birth. But this person was very well-meaning. He's been immersed in the Aita community for 7 years, and yet he's not, so to say, he's not legally, he has no legal background on the consequences of what he's doing. Second, on correction of entries. For convenience, some teachers, they just follow. When there are wrong entries in birth certificates, they just follow what's written there, not minding if it's correct or not. It's just for convenience. So the school records of the child, they follow this, even if it's, the child would have a different last name, surname with their parents. But since it is what is written in the birth certificate, the educators, they follow this for convenience. Of course, they have no ill intent in doing this, but still, it's the lack of legal knowledge that pushes them to do this. So the practice of IBP Cebu of gathering clients addresses this concern. Letting people know that assistance is available is one big stride towards addressing the problem in access to justice. These innovations in legal assistance fills the gap that has long been unaddressed. On the part of member chapters like us, this partnership between IBP through the leadership of IBP National Center for Legal Aid and ABA Rule of Law Initiative gives us affirmation that we are on the right track. But more importantly, the support it provides expands our capacity to provide more legal services to IP communities. Finally, I'd like to share, we are slated to conduct the second iteration of Upland Birthright, But this time, our partners are asking us to provide paralegal training for community leaders so that in the future, I think they don't want to see us anymore, so that in the future, they will be more self-reliant in addressing the problems which Upland Birthright seeks to address. We intend to follow the roadmap of IP Legal Aid Caravan of IBP, NCLA, and Abaroli, which will surely benefit our partner communities more. Access to justice, social justice, sustainability. It's good to hear that we have common themes. It's good to hear that we, IBP, Abaroli, and our partner communities are united in our goals and aspirations. We are very much inspired with this morning session. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Attorney Dalia. So at this point in the session, I'd like to, since we've completed the all the speakers, I'd like to ask if anyone among the attendees has any questions for any of our speakers. We're happy to answer them. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions or seeing any hands. So I guess I'll go ahead and conclude the session. So as we conclude this session, I'd like to express our appreciation to Bruce Lasky and his team at Babciackle Foundation, and as well as the APBC Secretariat for organizing and supporting this important gathering of pro bono movers and advocates. On behalf of Abaroli, my profoundest appreciation goes to the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, our most important partner in pro bono legal aid. Abaroli is working in partnership with the IBP to encourage Filipino lawyers to engage in pro bono lawyering, and we look forward to expanding our reach and fulfilling the needs and the best interests of Filipinos and Filipino communities for competent and committed legal services. So maraming salamat to everyone who's here today. And before I let you go, I think we're going to try to do a picture. I don't know, Jade, do you want to take over or? Okay, all right, so just count it down. Okay, so I'm just gonna count, if everybody could turn their cameras on, those that are with us, if you could just turn your cameras on now so we can get a group picture. So let's see. All right, everybody who can hear me is turning on their cameras. All right, I will give you about 5 more seconds. Looks like got a few more coming on. Okay, so I'm going to give us a count of 3, and then we'll take the picture. And so everybody, give us your most beautiful smile. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, should we do one more? Okay, let's do one more. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Hold on. Okay, wait, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we got a good one. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day, and it's been a pleasure. See you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.